Let's get some more analysis on this from Derya Unutmaz, who is an immunologist over at the Jackson Laboratory. He joins us here from Istanbul. Derya, good to have you on the show. All right, I don't know much about this pill, but let's start off with the main differences between the COVID-19 vaccine and this pill that is going to be produced by Pfizer. All I know is that they both greatly reduce the risk of hospitalizations and deaths amongst adults.
Yes, indeed. This pill is almost revolutionary in COVID treatment. There was another pill, molnupiravir from Merck, which also was very effective, but Pfizer's pill was 90% effective in reducing, hospitalization, but 100% in reducing death, if given the first 5 days of when the symptoms start. So that's a very critical point. The main difference is that the vaccines are a preventive measure. So you get vaccinated and you're protected against severe disease and death, and mostly to symptomatic disease for many months and perhaps down to many years. Whereas the drugs have to be given after you contract the virus. So they're sort of the last point of intervention. Let's say you're vaccinated and you have risk factors, you're 80 years old and you have heart disease and diabetes, then you still have a risk of hospitalization, even death, even post-vaccination. So you can take this drug to completely prevent that. Of course, for unvaccinated, it's even more important.
Okay.
So it won't be given to everybody, but those with a risk factor, this would be life-saving.
Can they be used interchangeably?
With the vaccine?
Yes.
Definitely not. So the priority is always the vaccine. It basically tells your immune system to do the job that these pills have to do. It's very cheap. It's extremely effective. But these pills are basically a sort of a backup. And as I said, they will have some side effects as well. They're not like the vaccines. In particular, molnupiravir might have some long-term side effects as well. So, and they're more expensive. As you mentioned, they have to have special licensing to produce them in, sufficient amounts and in a cost-effective manner. So definitely not a replacement. You have to get vaccinated, but at least there is another backup in case you're infected, even post-vaccination.
What are some of the side effects of using the pill?
So like every drug, Pfizer's drug probably have less side effects. It's what's we protease inhibitor. It's actually two drugs. It's given together with an HIV drug called ritonavir, which is also blocks this enzyme called a protease that the virus needs to replicate. It has some side effects. It can form a fat deposit and can have some liver toxicity issues. They're not very common. But like every drug, they do. Molnupiravir, it works in a different mechanism. It actually introduces mutations on the virus RNA and replicates. So there is a remote chance. It's very remote, but there is a possibility it could also introduce mutations in our own genome or DNA, which could, of course, could have bad consequences. Hasn't been shown, but we will know when it's more widespreadly used. So they're not completely, 100% without side effects. If you have the vaccine, you should get the vaccine and have these drugs as a backup.
Okay. I've been reading that variants and mutations of COVID-19 or the coronavirus can cause different side effects, of the disease. Do we know if the pill is sort of effective against all of them, or as we see this mutant, this virus mutate, will we need perhaps an upgrade, a change in the pill's recipe?
So that's a very important question. That's one advantage of these drugs. It's much more difficult for virus to escape these drugs by mutations. It's a possibility, but we know from HIV, actually, when you combine drugs, in this case, Pfizer is combining with an HIV drug, but you can potentially combine it with molnupiravir, for example, because they have different mechanisms with the Pfizer and the Merck drug together. Essentially, there's no way the virus can mutate its way out of that. And again, we know this from HIV. HIV mutates very fast, but when you combine two drugs, there was no possibility. Of course, these trials have to be done, and these two companies need to come together to try that. But it's much less likely that the virus variants or mutations can escape these drugs. So that's a great news.
I know you're an immunologist, so this may not be your exact area of specialty, but I want to ask you, is it common for companies, big pharmaceutical companies, giants, let's say, to actually give up royalties? Because when it comes to the pill, I think that's exactly what Pfizer is doing.
Not very common, unfortunately, but this is a pandemic and it's an emergency. The vaccine companies need to do that too, and some of them are doing it, contributing to a WHO initiative, contributing vaccines, not sufficiently, but definitely this is not very common. It's been done for HIV drugs, which were very expensive at the beginning, and most of HIV was in Africa and India. So they started producing very cheap versions of these drugs. When I say versions, they're identical, but they're licensed at a much lower price, and that really saved a lot of lives. So it's a great way to spread the use of these drugs, and I applaud them for that. But it's not as common as we would like.
And this is going to be a great benefit for low and middle income countries as it's planned. All right, Derya Unutmaz, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much.